the manager for Dunbia, and as I said, he's going to give an overview of the Herefords.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Okay, firstly, a big thank you to Dave and Maggie and Harriet for inviting me along today to give an overview of the Hereford scheme and hopefully an overview of where the meat industry is today and where we need to be going in the future. And again, any questions as we move through here, just shout out and we'll try our best to answer them as we go along. So a very quick overview of who Dunbia are if you don't already know. So we are one of the biggest meat processors in the British Isles. We have 22 processing facilities around the British Isles, 30,000 suppliers, employ over 7,000 people, slaughtering 3 million lambs a year and over 1 million cattle a year. So before we start, what are the main challenges within the beef industry? Over this past 30 to 40 years, there's been a continuous decline in the per capita intakes of beef within the UK and Europe. But this trend is definitely influenced by a number of factors, but one of the factors that has influenced it is the variability in our beef that we are supplying to the consumer. If we take a look at this graph, we can see that the average age of slaughter in the UK is in or around 28 months for prime beef. And if we look at the genetic potential of any beef animal, the potential is for that animal to be slaughtered at 12 to 13 months of age. So number one, from an economic perspective, we're not utilising the potential of that animal. And number two, we're introducing a great degree of variability into the product that we deliver to the consumer. And that variability will lead to dissatisfaction and ultimately a reduction in purchases of beef on the supermarket shelf. So there's lots of research out there at the minute that's showing if a consumer has a bad eating experience, it'll be 3 months before that consumer repeat buys. Equally, we're not utilising the genetic potential of the animal. We've heard two fantastic talks this morning about genetics and how we need to utilise that potential. At the minute within the UK, we're not utilising the potential whatsoever. So there's massive opportunity here for the UK beef industry to improve where we're at from our current situation. And if we're not utilising that genetic potential and our nutrition is not delivering that genetic potential, we also are more susceptible to disease. So this is a graph from a Northern Ireland database. So in Northern Ireland we have a system called Bovis that records every single animal that's slaughtered in Northern Ireland onto a database that's then reported annually. And you can see from the graph, the majority of cattle are slaughtered from 22 to 36 months. This continues on up, and you can see the carcass weight's a pretty flat line. So the genetic potential is there to deliver carcass weights of 300 kilos at 12 to 15 months. Yet as an industry, we're sitting out at the tail end. If you look at the full economic cost of production, somebody along that supply chain is losing money. So if we take a very generic approach, and I have to say the Scottish Rural College have promoted this for this last 5 years, that if we reduce the age of slaughter in the UK, we will increase the sustainability of the UK beef industry, and this graph illustrates this perfectly as well. So we're looking at aiming for efficient beef production down here, whilst up here, somebody, as I said, along that supply chain is losing out. Another major challenge that we have as a result of this is the variability and the quality of the product that we deliver to the consumer. And this variability, as you can see from the picture, is happening day in, day out. So our retail partners have set weight pack sizes for their steaks, for example, and you can see if we increase the variability of product coming in through our door, we cannot deliver a consistent steak to our consumer. Now the cooking instructions in the back of each of these packs is the same, irrespective of whether the steak's an inch thick or half an inch thick. So if the consumer goes by the cooking instructions, 9 times out of 10, it's not going to be cooked to their liking and they're not going to enjoy the eating experience. And you might say to me, why not have a fixed thickness of steak on the supermarket shelf? We have done a lot of research in this area, but what that leads to is if you have large steaks and you have a fixed thickness of steak, these steaks are left on the shelf because the price point is too expensive for the consumer. So as a pack and a unit price, it's too expensive. The consumer now wants a small steak that's thick, that can deliver a proper eating experience according to the cooking instructions in the back of the packet. So this is something we definitely have to address, and this is driven by the large number of breeds we have, the large variation in the weights of the carcasses, our range in fat classes, etc, etc, etc. And you can see here, every year this figure is the same, that around 50% of the beef that we supply to the factories is outside the ideal specification. Now, as producers of a food product, we really need to be thinking about what we're doing in terms of delivering a satisfactory product to the consumer. So, focusing in on the Hereford breed, we started this initiative back in 2013, and the first question you might ask is, why did we choose Hereford? Well, some market research and historical data showed us that the Hereford breed had very good eating quality. It also showed us that in terms of its genetic variation, as a breed, they had quite a low variation within the breed. So we felt that this was a good opportunity for us to drive some consistency into this supply chain. And as well, in any breed scheme, because you're focusing in on one breed, you're automatically reducing the variability in the product to start with, because you're only having the variation within one breed as opposed to 25 different breeds going onto a supermarket shelf. So the key attributes of the Hereford is this consistency and this high quality in terms of meat quality, and the market research showed us that consumers preferred Hereford beef over other breeds. So we started this initiative with the co-op back in 2013, and just to highlight, this week in the Which UK Sirloin Steak Review, the Hereford sirloin steak came out top for the co-op in Waitrose. So this is a high quality product that's reviewed on a continuous basis, and we know it can deliver for consumers. So the Hereford scheme is very much about promoting the consistency and quality. It's about promoting farming practices that lead to further attributes within that scheme, so high welfare standards, continuous development of the farmers within that scheme, and as well hitting these standard deliverables that we have in our specification. So we have farming groups that deliver the Herefords to the co-op, and these farming groups engage in activities every year to improve their farming practices at farm level. And the bonus is paid for all farmers that supply Herefords with a registered sire, and the farmer is registered to supply the cattle as well. So in terms of where we're heading in the future, and we have touched on this earlier this morning, dairy origin beef in the UK is also becoming more important in terms of overall beef supply, and we have to drive consistency into that as well. And the Hereford breed, we feel, is one breed that can deliver a massive amount of gain in this type of production system. But this type of production system, through Dunbia and Co-op, we're creating this supply chain integration, and what that means is that we want to make the data more available throughout that supply chain, so you as farmers can see the data that's coming from the top, and the retailers can see the data that's coming from you, and together we can push consistency and deliver a product that's very traceable and very quantifiable in terms of what's actually happening on farm. So we want to improve this market transparency, we want to improve market security for producers, and lead to ultimately a more sustainable production system. So as I say, dairy origin beef is definitely going to be a major part of our future beef production. At present, 57% of prime beef is coming from the dairy herd. When I started with Dunbia 6.5 years ago, this was below 50%. So you can see the trend, we're increasing just over 1% each year at the current rate of going. And predictions are we will hit in or around 70% supply from the dairy herd and 30% from the suckler herd in 2030. So that's sort of where predictions are going, and that trend seems to be ringing true in terms of where the beef's coming from. There is a renewed interest in this from the retailer, and the co-op have backed Dunbia in terms of establishing the dairy origin beef scheme, getting the Hereford breed in there to produce that consistent, high quality product running through their supermarket shelves. So in terms of production targets, if you remember, one of my first slides said that the average age of prime beef slaughter in the UK was in around 28 months. We are targeting a much younger age of slaughter. So what we're trying to achieve is an animal that has a productive life, that within that productive life that animal faces no checks. If it faces no checks, the amount of connective tissue in the muscle will reduce because stress situations increase the amount of connective tissue in the muscles and ultimately lead to tougher meat. So we're trying to have a production system that follows the growth curve through the supply chain and also reaches a younger age of slaughter. So we're looking for a target age of slaughter at that 15 to 16 months of age, and if we can drive that, and the data from SRUC, as I said earlier, has been showing this for 5 years now, that if we can get down to 15, 16 months age of slaughter in a prime beef, we will not only increase the sustainability of the farmers that are supplying the product, but we will also increase the consistency and quality of the product going to the consumer. And that will instill confidence in the consumer and hopefully deliver increased growth in sales in the UK market as we speak. So this is a type of infrastructure that's behind such a supply chain. And as you'll see in a minute, data collection throughout this supply chain is extremely important. And we're no way, by any stretch of the imagination, close to where the Irish are in terms of data collection and the genetics that they have in place and the genetic improvement they're making at a national level, but we have to start somewhere, and we believe the starting point is by collecting data. So when we do the genomic analysis, etc., we have the phenotypic data there to make the decisions and speed up that process. So this supply chain starts with the dairy farmers the whole way through the retailer. We have all our experts here on the left hand side delivering information into that, and then we have our genetics and our milk processors also adding value to that supply chain as well. So this is very much integrating that full supply chain, not only thinking about the source of the beef, but also introducing all these other aspects to make this as efficient as possible and deliver as consistent a product as possible. Data collection. So in this initiative, Dunbia are planning to put up on 10,000 animals a year through this to start with. And the most important thing in this is data collection. And this data collection process starts with the farmers believing and engaging in data collection and believing that that will make a difference to their day-to-day planning. And if the farmer uses the data to its full extent, we can make dramatic improvements on farm level, because you'll be able to quantify any change you make at farm level and make decisions based on data as opposed to maybe a wee bit of gut feeling. So looking at some performance figures, I'm just going to present some performance figures now from our dairy origin beef scheme, and this is comparing different breeds in that scheme. So this is during the first 12 weeks of the rearing period. And we can see the growth. These are the breeds of calves we have down here, all out of the dairy herd. And this is the performance in terms of kilos per day that the calves are doing in that first 12 weeks on the rearing farm. And just to highlight, the Hereford here is as good as the other top performing animals in this system. And interestingly, the Holstein and the dairy breeds are performing just as well as the beef breeds in this system. You can see the difference here between the two sexes. Steers perform extremely well, heifers are back a wee bit in terms of performance, and we're seeing this the whole way through the animal's life, that heifers in general are performing less than steers, and these animals are castrated at 6 weeks of age, so it's not as if there's a testosterone effect coming through there. This is just a direct X and Y chromosome effect. In terms of our finishing farms, and I have to highlight that this is of data of indoor systems as well. These are the growth rates per day on our finishing farms, and the interesting thing here is that the average age of slaughter in this data set on steers and heifers was 13.3 months from animals coming from the dairy herd with a carcass weight of just below 300 kilos. So you can see the performance of the different breeds, and again the Hereford standing out there as a high performing animal within this system. And that was maybe one of the questions we would have of the native breeds in this type of system. Are they going to perform as well as the continental breeds? And you can see from the data, absolutely, performing equally as well and delivering that consistency and high quality when we get to the product as well. So in terms of antibiotic usage, in this type of production system, we record every single piece of information that happens on the farm, and this is the percentage of animals that were treated with an antibiotic during that rearing period, which is the most vulnerable period in this production cycle. And you can see the Herefords required the least amount of antibiotic in this production system, with some of the other breeds having a high percentage of animals treated. I have to add that in general, this is relatively low compared to the rest of the industry, and Dunbia do have a unique rearing system for these calves, but the results here clearly highlight the disease-resistant potential that the Hereford breed has within this production system, and something that everybody is interested in now is the use of antimicrobials in these types of production systems, because antimicrobial resistance is very important for human health going forward. So this next slide is just moving forward a wee bit onto the meat quality side. So we've shown we can drive consistency into the product by having a reduced age of slaughter and having less breeds in terms of what we're going into premium lines. But in terms of the actual product itself and how it eats, this is a graph from ICBF, and they've done some work on tenderness on different breeds. This is Hereford, Blue, Angus, Limousin, Charolais, Sailor and Simmental. And you can see the Hereford came out top in terms of tenderness, but the interesting thing about this graph is the reduced variability of the native breeds. So the variation within that Warner Blitzer shear force measurement is greatly reduced, and driving consistency in terms of meat quality into that supply chain. And this is very, very important. We need to drive consistency into the product that we deliver to the consumer, because the consumer then knows that every time they come back into that shop and buy a steak off the shop shelf, they will get the same eating experience as they did the time before, and that is extremely important. If they get a bad eating experience, they will not repeat buy for 3 months. So it's very important we deliver consistency. Very, very important. Just coming to an end now, but this is sort of to finish off some data from within the co-op retail performance. And again, this is the steak line that we're talking about that came out top on the Which Awards there this week. But this is the percentage growth year on year in sales. Now bear in mind, beef intake is decreasing year on year in Europe, but within the co-op on this beef brand, it's increasing year on year in sales. And this is because the consumer is having confidence in the product, and the consumer is going back and repeat buying more often. So because they have the confidence, they're buying more often, and the sales are increasing within that line. And you can see that filters down the whole way to burgers as well. So not only your very high value cuts in terms of your sirloins, rumps and fillets, but also down to your further processed products. So the key messages here in terms of what we're taking home today are that as a whole, we need to drive consistency into the product that we're supplying to the consumer, because at the end of the day, the consumer is king. The consumer is the person who's buying the product that we produce. And we also need to think about our meat quality attributes as well. It's the Hereford breed delivers in bagfuls and spadefuls to the consumer through that consistency and that high level of tenderness. Okay, any questions, guys? The question was that our specification for animals is very wide. Are we intending to close that specification to try and improve consistency? The limitation that we have is that if we close at the minute, because the variability is so high within the whole market, if we close that specification, we will reduce the number of animals that have the potential to go into the supply chain. So then we don't have the critical mass to deliver for the demand that's there. So the first thing we need to do is increase or improve the consistency of the product, and then we can start tightening down specs after we have enough volume going through at a much higher consistency. It's a chicken and egg type approach, but I suppose the thing that would throw back as a farmer, if you bring down the age of slaughter too, you will also improve the economic efficiency at farm level. So potentially it's got to work both ways, but at the end of the day, you'll make more money if you reduce the age of slaughter, and there's loads of data out there to show that. SRUC have been promoting this for 5-6 years, and they're actually saying to us probably it's not the way to do it is to increase the premium for young beef. It's to get the farmer to think about his business and making money and trying to reduce the age of slaughter so we can get more animals through the system and improve the efficiency at farm level. Question is, if you want to reduce the age of slaughter to 15-16 months, that is aligned with a high grain intake in terms of production system, and this is partially true, So if you're looking at 15, 16 months, what you're talking about is one season of grass, which is the same if you're 18 or 20 months. This is all about management and data collection. You actually, if you can put cattle out to grass for 5 to 6 months and get 1.3 kilos a day by offering a rotational grazing system. Equally, you can get 0.6 kilos a day by set stocking. So management is a huge part to play in this, and we done trials in grazing in Northern Ireland and on Herefords and Angus, and there was farmers getting 1.3 kilos a day by managing grass exceptionally well. And we can get these growth rates without increasing the amount of grain that goes into the production system and reduce the age of slaughter, absolutely. And Dave and Mag are doing it here. They were killing animals in 16 months this spring on a grass-based system, so it's absolutely achievable.